this is the Sonoff Basic. It's a neat little relay switch that you can operate from your smartphone via Wi-Fi, and you can even link it to Amazon Alexa or Google Home. And I use a few of these. I have one to turn my TV and my audio amplifier on, so the TV turns on automatically. And they're useful little gadgets. They're kind of universal. The only thing they're not that great at is you can't just swap it straight with your light switch in your wall, because then you lose the functionality of the on-off switch on the wall switch. But a lot of people just simply chop a power cord in half, feed it in the one side and in the other side, and it just breaks the live, and then it simply turns the device on and off. Very useful, but a little bit limited. It's got this little switch on here to manually override. But the one I've used for this video is a clone, and it looks near enough identical. And this one's wired in, so I can show you with a light bulb next to it. If it comes on when you press the little test button in the front, and it comes off. But there's a little hack that I've done, because I would really like to have the original light switch on the wall still functioning. So if you're going to replace this with this, you would need to interface somehow with the Sonoff or the clone, as in this case. And what I've done is I have tacked onto the little switch inside, I've soldered two little wires onto the pins and just brought them out and put them into a connector block. And you can buy these switches in a reactive press switch, which is like a normal switch like this, except it doesn't stay in one position. You press it and it releases. This particular one was bought from Toolstation. It was very cheap. It was about £1. But now I've got the function to press and release, and it's the same as this little button here does. As you can see, it achieves the same thing. Now, it does mean that you would have to take your original switch off the wall and change it to one of these press type ones, press and release type ones. But luckily they're freely available. And it does mean that you would have to modify your Sonoff Basic, or in this case the clone, by soldering wires onto this little switch inside. There are software hacks and things that people have done. I just find it's quite easy just to solder two wires onto it. There's software hacks people have done which allows you to wire a clicky switch like this to it, and it just changes it from a single pulse to a on one position and off to the other position. And but it seems to involve to flash the firmware inside the unit just to get that to work. The other problem, of course, is you can't put these behind the light switch because there's no neutral, depending in which country you're in. Very often I live in the UK, and the neutral is up by the ceiling rows where the light is, and there's only a live feed that goes back down to the light switch. So it would go to the back of the light switch, and then that switch live would then go back up to the light up in the ceiling. So you would have to mount these up where the ceiling rose is up in the ceiling, so that you can get a neutral, and then take the switch live, the switch strappers that come from your switch. You'd have to take them out of the ceiling rows and then connect them to your little extension you've made connected to this little switch, and then swap it over to a reactive press switch like this one. And with maybe a little junction box or a connector connect a block inside a box, you can achieve that quite easily. So in the UK, if you wanted to connect your Sonoff and there's no neutral behind the light switch, you'd have to have the Sonoff sitting above the ceiling, above this ceiling rose, which is like a 3-plate connector box that the little pendant light or light fitting hangs off of, and the 3 connections are normally hidden inside. So what you'd have to do is you'd have to change this switch on the wall to a reactive press, one that when you press it makes a connection, and when you release it turns off. So it's just press and release, not a clicky switch like it was before. Take them out, connect them to the Sonoff where you made the little connection behind the test switch. The Sonoff would need a live, so you'd pick up a live and a neutral to feed to the Sonoff, and the live feeding, the switch live feeding to the light fitting would have to go to the output of the Sonoff. So this is more or less what it should look like, pretty much like this, where now you have a neutral going to the Sonoff because it needs one, and there's normally not one behind the light switch. Like I was lucky I had one, but this would have to go up the ceiling void, and then you have a live as well. So live, neutral coming into the Sonoff. The reactive switch changed in the front of the wall, connected to your little connection of the test switch that you modified the Sonoff. The light is now being removed. The light live has been removed and connected to the output of the Sonoff. The way I'm going to demonstrate it here is I'm quite lucky because in my shed I know that there's a neutral behind the light switch. So I'll have a live and neutral to feed on the input of this Sonoff. So I can just take the little plasterboard box out and drop this behind it, and it'll have a live and neutral supply. Because I have various other things, there's some power supplies on the wall for LED lights for the garden, so there's definitely a neutral there, I know that for a fact. And I shall demonstrate this next. Okay, Google, turn on the shed lights.
Okay, turning shed lights on.
And you can of course manually override it by pressing this button here, or the little test button on the front that does it as well. That's where we tacked 2 wires onto, so we bring the functionality out. It works just fine. So anybody walking into the room can still manually activate it on the light switch on the wall. Now in my shed I have a double switch 2-gang switch, and one does outside LED lights and some garden lights as well. And the original switch on this side did the lights inside the shed, and I had to replace it with one of these. I'm quite lucky that the model is very similar, and this reactive press switch you can simply unscrew from the back there, and it fits fairly neatly. The whole mechanism, it does fall apart though, so be careful. And you can replace all the gubbins or everything across, take the original switch off, and then instead of having a click on click off switch, you then have one. This one says press in the front. I don't know if you can see it. It gives you that momentary press action with the spring that releases, and that's what you want, because that then triggers this little button here, which I've soldered 2 wires to the bottom of the PCB. On the Sonoff, you need to tack it onto the switch contacts where they're soldered to. On the Sonoff clone, this Yantong Chinese smart copy of the Sonoff. It was quite easy because it was through-hole components, so the switch on the other side, you could just solder 2 small wires where the pins go through the PCB. I have tacked 2 wires onto the back of this little tactile switch, just at the back of the 2 contacts, and extended them out. And it's fairly easy to do, and then they will extend on to a reactive press switch. So here we have the Sonoff Basic, and this is the little test switch in the front, which I've tacked 2 wires to, just soldered them onto these little pins here, and that's then gone to thin wires that go to a connector block that I put a thicker gauge in that can fit into the reactive press switch that goes on the wall plate. And this is where you connect your live and neutral. It needs a neutral, unfortunately, for the power supply to work. And the live comes in here, feeds the power supply and feeds the relay. Relay breaks it, goes along here, and in here it becomes the output, live output. We don't need the neutral on this side because the light fitting has its own neutral, so we only need to break the live, and that's it. And I'm using the Sonoff clone, which these pins are brought through in through-hole components, and I'm tacked wires on the other side here. It's much easier than these dinky little pins here. Yeah, so it turns out if you use these cheapy wall switches like I did, it might even work with more expensive models. It's this reactive press button that I wanted, and I was lucky. It was a relatively straight swap. This is the model I purchased from Toolstation. Just unscrewed there and there, carefully transferred the button, and screwed it back in, and it fits. I think there's a slight gap, slightly different size, but it seems to fit fairly nice. And I'll demonstrate how I'm going to fit this. Right, so I've removed the light switch, converted one of them in reactive press, so it returns automatically, so I can get a pulse for the Sonoff that's been modified. Now we're going to see if there's a neutral behind there, which there should be, because I know there's some other gubbins behind there, like a LED power supply, a neutral feed for a PIR, and if we're lucky, everything should just fall to place. I've also added a 3 amp fuse. Since I've only got LED lights, it'll help to protect the Sonoff, its little 10 amp relay, if there's any short circuits, so that it doesn't get overloaded too easy. I can see lots of neutrals, lots of flammable paper. This the walls of the shed has been insulated with environmentally friendly paper. I have treated it with some boric acid to make it to fireproof it. It provides excellent insulation, and it didn't cost anything because it was for free, courtesy of the office. Right, I'm gonna open that connection to find the neutral. Okay, so I found my neutral. I've teed off from this neutral here. It is on the lighting circuit. So of course the Sonoff, or clone in this case, needs a neutral to work because it has an internal power supply. But I'm not bringing the neutral through to the other side because it only needs to do the switch live of the lights. So I'll connect my neutral. these little Wago connectors, which are so convenient. And I shall also give it a live via this little 3 amp fuse, just to sort of protect everything. Gives it a little bit of protection. Since these cables are probably only about 1 mil. And the lighting circuit I think is 5 amp circuit. I think I say 6 amp these days. Has supply, has neutral. Now all we need to do is connect the output to the lights. With these handy Wago connectors. So quick. It's a bit unorthodox, the wiring here, because you normally don't have a neutral at your disposal like this. Should really be. I mean, neutrals behind light switches should become more common now, because you have more and more electronics that need a neutral to function behind the light switch. In theory, that should now work. It just started raining outside now. Well, I think what we need to do is we need to shove all of this into the cavity here behind in the wall. Should be some space for it. So we'll give the light the other light switch. The clicky one needs a live feed as well, like it used to have before. And it used to be in this switch position here. But we'll leave it out for now. So this red and black wire is no longer a live and a switch live. It's now just a signal wire for the Sonoff that goes to this returning switch to provide a pulse. So it doesn't need a live feed. Hence it's this cable that I'm using, which should be sufficient just for a signal. Doubling them up so that they fit in connections properly. This is just an experiment. I've never tried this before, but there's no reason why it shouldn't work. There are other Sonoffs that can replace light switches, but this was a cheap alternative. And I just wanted to try to see if it could be done. Normally this would be up in the ceiling rows, but I just happen to have a neutral behind the light switch, so I thought I might as well do it here as well. Now the old switch needs doing as well. Short my cable. We can give that a test. Just need to turn the power on. We want to stay safe because I do not want to get electrocuted, so I had the circuit breaker turned off. So just give me a second and I shall be back with the electricity turned on. Okay, Google, turn off the shed lights.
Alright, turning off shed lights.
As you can see. Okay, Google, turn on the shed lights.
Alright, turning shed lights on.
And then the other thing should work as well. The TV should work as well. Okay, Google, turn on the shed TV.
Okay, turning on the TV.
So the TV and the amp is all turned on, and that works with another Sonoff as well. And let's see if it can turn them all off at the same time. Okay, Google, turn everything off in the shed.
Sure, turning off 2 switches.
As you can see, 2 devices turned off. Works a treat. And I'll try the clicky switch in the front. So we retain our original functionality. All I have to do is put it back together. Right, so switch plate is back in. And yeah, it seems to work well. Let's test it with Google Home again. Okay, Google, turn off the shed lights.
Got it, turning off shed lights.
Ta-da! And now I'll manually override it on the wall for anybody else that doesn't have control on Google Home. They're back on again. And they're off. Now let's turn them on. Let's try. Hey Google, turn on the shed lights. Hey,
Okay,
presto.
turning on shed lights.
Works. And this should work fine with Amazon Alexa and the little Google speaker as well. That's it.